Dean Martin's voice filled the Copa Room. Everyone was mesmerized. But then Dean suddenly stopped. Because the man sitting in the front row couldn't be there. Dean had buried him 6 months ago. The Sands Hotel, Las Vegas. March 1963. Friday night. The Copa Room was packed, every table filled, every booth occupied, cigarette smoke drifting through the amber stage lights like ghosts. Dean Martin stood at the microphone in his black tuxedo, bow tie perfectly straight, hair immaculate, that easy smile on his face that made everyone in the room feel like they were his personal friend. He was singing, "Everybody Loves Somebody." The orchestra behind him was tight, professional, led by conductor Ken Lane, whose baton moved with practiced precision. The song was going beautifully. Dean's voice, that warm, effortless baritone, wrapped around every word like velvet. The audience sat transfixed. This was peak Dean Martin. The king of cool. The man who made everything look easy, who never seemed to break a sweat, who could hold a room of 300 people in the palm of his hand with nothing more than a smile and a song. Dean was halfway through the second verse. His eyes swept the room casually, the way they always did during a performance. Making eye contact, acknowledging a familiar face here and there, connecting with his audience without breaking character. His gaze drifted to the front row. Table 7. Right side. And Dean Martin stopped singing. Not gradually. Not a smooth ending. He just stopped. Mid-word. His mouth stayed open for a beat, then closed. His hand gripped the microphone stand so hard his knuckles went white. The orchestra, well-trained and professional, kept playing for another 2 bars before Ken Lane noticed something was wrong. He cut them off with a sharp gesture. The music died. The Copa Room fell into confused silence. 300 people staring at Dean Martin, who stood frozen at the microphone, his face completely drained of color, his eyes locked on a man sitting at table 7. Dean didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The room understood anyway. The man at table 7 was maybe 50 years old. Dark suit. White shirt. No tie. His face was weathered, lined with the kind of deep creases that come from hard living and harder decisions. His eyes were wet with tears that he wasn't bothering to hide. Dean's mouth moved, but no sound came out. He tried again. "Tommy?" The word was barely audible, even with the microphone inches from his lips. The man nodded slowly. One hand raised slightly, palm up. A gesture that meant, "Yes, it's me, I'm here." Dean took a step back from the microphone. His hand went to his face, covering his eyes for just a moment. When he lowered it, the king of cool was gone. What remained was just Dino, the kid from Steubenville, Ohio, who had once had a best friend named Tommy DiGiacomo. Ken Lane stood at the conductor's podium, baton frozen in midair, looking between Dean and the man at table 7. The musicians shifted in their seats, uncertain. The audience remained silent, sensing they were witnessing something private, something that transcended entertainment. Dean walked away from the microphone. He stepped to the edge of the stage, 3 feet down to the Copa Room floor, and without hesitation, without grace, without any of his usual smooth composure, he jumped down. His landing was awkward. He nearly stumbled. Nobody had ever seen Dean Martin stumble. He walked straight to table 7. The people at the surrounding tables leaned back, giving him space, everyone understanding without being told that this moment was sacred. Tommy DiGiacomo stood up. He was shorter than Dean, thicker in the middle, his suit worn and too big for his frame. He looked like a man who had been through hell and barely made it back. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Then Dean pulled him into an embrace. Not the casual, backslapping hug of showbiz acquaintances. A real embrace. Dean's arms wrapped around his old friend like he was afraid if he let go, Tommy would disappear again. "I thought you were dead," Dean whispered, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear. "They told me you were dead." Tommy's voice was rough, damaged, like he'd forgotten how to use it properly. "I was supposed to be. To understand what happened next, you need to understand what happened in September 1962. Dean Martin and Tommy DiGiacomo had been friends since they were 14 years old in Steubenville. Not casual friends. Brothers. They'd run the streets together, gotten into trouble together, dreamed together about getting out of that steel mill town and making something of themselves. Dean had made it out. Changed his name from Dino Crocetti to Dean Martin, became a singer, partnered with Jerry Lewis, became a movie star, became one of the most famous entertainers in the world. Tommy hadn't made it out. He'd stayed in Steubenville, worked the mills, married a local girl, had 3 kids, lived the life Dean had escaped. They'd stayed in touch over the years, Christmas cards, occasional phone calls, a visit when Dean came through Ohio for a show. In August 1962, Tommy had called Dean. His voice was different. Scared. "Dino, I'm in trouble." "What kind of trouble?" "The bad kind. The kind where people don't walk away." Tommy had gotten involved with the wrong people. Loan sharks. Gambling debts that spiraled out of control. He owed $40,000 to men who didn't negotiate payment plans. The kind of men who made examples. Dean had wired him the money. All of it. $40,000, no questions asked. "Get clear of them, Tommy. Take Rose and the kids and disappear for a while if you have to. I'll call you next week." But when Dean called the following week, Rose answered the phone crying. "They found him in the river, Dean." They found Tommy in the river. The body had been badly decomposed. 3 days in the water. The coroner said it was consistent with a fall from the Veterans Bridge, the same bridge where jumpers went when they couldn't see another way out. Tommy's wallet had been in his jacket pocket. The dental records matched. Rose had been certain. He was so ashamed, Dean. About the debt. About asking you for money? I think he couldn't live with it. Dean had flown to Steubenville for the funeral. Closed casket. He'd stood in the rain at the cemetery and watched them lower his oldest friend into the ground. He'd given Rose an envelope with enough money to take care of the kids' college. He'd gone back to Las Vegas and thrown himself into work, because that was what Dean Martin did. He kept moving. He kept performing. He kept the mask in place. Subscribe and leave a comment, because the most powerful part of this story is still ahead. Except Tommy DiGiacomo hadn't been in that casket. The man they'd pulled from the river was Tommy. But he hadn't jumped. He'd been thrown. After Dean wired the money, Tommy had paid his debt. But the men he owed didn't just want their money back. They wanted the lesson to stick. They wanted everyone in Steubenville to know what happened when you borrowed from them. They'd grabbed Tommy outside his house. Beaten him. Thrown him off the bridge. Left him for dead. But Tommy was tougher than they'd counted on. He'd survived the fall. Broken ribs, punctured lung, fractured skull. He'd washed up 3 miles downriver, crawled onto the bank, and passed out in a drainage culvert. A homeless veteran named Earl had found him. Earl didn't ask questions. He dragged Tommy to an abandoned warehouse where a community of forgotten men lived off the grid. They had a doctor there. A man who'd lost his license to alcoholism but still remembered how to set bones and stitch wounds. Tommy woke up 4 days later. His face was purple with bruises. His ribs hurt so bad he couldn't take a full breath. But he was alive. Earl told him the truth. "They found a body in the river. Everyone thinks it's you. If you show your face now, you're dead for real. My wife. My kids. Your wife buried you yesterday. She thinks you're gone. And maybe that's better. Maybe they're safer thinking you're dead." Tommy had made the hardest choice of his life. He'd stayed dead. For 6 months he'd lived in that warehouse with Earl and the others. He'd healed slowly. His ribs knit back together. His face returned to something recognizable. He'd grown a beard, let his hair go long. He'd worked odd jobs for cash, loading trucks, washing dishes in kitchens that didn't ask for ID. And every day, he'd thought about Rose. About his kids, Angela, 14, Tony, 11. Little Maria ate. About how they thought their father had given up on them. About how they'd buried an empty casket while he hid like a coward. He'd thought about Dean, too. About his oldest friend singing in Las Vegas while believing Tommy had chosen death over shame. 3 days ago, Earl had shown him a newspaper. Rat packs at the Sands. Your friend Dean Martin's doing shows all month. Tommy had stared at that newspaper for an hour. Then he made his second hardest choice. He'd scraped together enough money for a bus ticket to Las Vegas. Hitchhiked the last 50 miles. Walked into the Sands Hotel looking like a bum, which he basically was. The security guard at the Copa Room entrance had started to turn him away until Tommy had said 6 words. I'm here to see Dean. Yeah, you and 500 other people, pal. Tell him Tommy DiGiacomo is alive. The security guard had laughed. But something in Tommy's eyes had stopped him. He'd made a call to the floor manager, who'd made a call to Dean's stage manager. Word had filtered up. And somehow, impossibly, Tommy had been given a seat at table 7. Backstage, Dean made a choice no one expected, because it wasn't for the cameras. Dean and Tommy stood in the Copa Room, still embracing, while 300 people watched in reverent silence. Finally, Dean pulled back, his hands on Tommy's shoulders, looking at his friend's face like he was trying to memorize it, to prove to himself this was real. You're alive, Dean said, and his voice cracked. Dean Martin, who never cracked, whose voice was the most controlled instrument in show business. Tommy, you're alive? I'm sorry, Tommy said. I'm so sorry. Rose and the kids, they think I'm dead. I let them bury me. I let them grieve. But I couldn't. I couldn't come back. They would have killed me. They would have killed them. Dean's face hardened. Who? Who did this to you? Tommy shook his head. It doesn't matter now. I just needed you to know. I needed one person in the world to know I didn't give up. I didn't choose to leave them. Dean turned to face the audience. His voice, when he spoke, carried the full weight of his presence. No microphone needed. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you something, and I need you to understand that what you're seeing right now is not part of the show. He gestured to Tommy. This man is my oldest friend. 6 months ago, I went to his funeral. I stood in the rain and watched them bury him. And tonight he walked into this room because he's been hiding. Hiding because some people in this world think $40,000 is worth more than a human life. The audience sat frozen. This wasn't entertainment. This was real pain, real grief, real rage barely contained beneath Dean's careful composure. I've spent 20 years making people laugh, Dean continued. Making people forget their problems for an hour or two. And I'm good at it. I'm real good at it. But tonight I can't do that. Tonight I can't pretend everything's fine and sing pretty songs while my best friend stands here having spent 6 months living like a ghost. He turned back to Tommy. You're coming home. Back to Rose. Back to your kids. And anyone who has a problem with that will have to go through me first. Tommy's face crumpled. Dean, you don't understand. These aren't the kind of people you can just... I don't care what kind of people they are. Dean interrupted, and there was steel in his voice now. You're Tommy DiGiacomo. You're from Steubenville. You're my brother. And nobody, I don't care who they are, nobody gets to decide you're better off dead. But what happened next was the part nobody, not even the band, was prepared to witness. Dean turned to the wings. Somebody get me a telephone. Right now. A stagehand appeared with a phone. Dean dialed from memory. The room stayed silent. This is Dean Martin. Put him on. A pause. I don't care if he's in a meeting. Put him on. Another pause. Then Dean spoke quietly, controlled. I need a favor. And I need it tonight. He looked at Tommy. I have a friend who needs to go home to his family. And I need you to make sure he can do that safely. Yes. That kind of safe. He listened. Thank you? He hung up. Dean put his arm around Tommy's shoulders. You're going home tomorrow. Rose gets her husband back. Your kids get their father. Tommy broke down completely. The king of cool held his best friend while he sobbed. The audience stood. Not applauding. Just standing. Bearing witness. Share and subscribe. Make sure this story is never forgotten. The next morning, Tommy DiGiacomo flew to Ohio with Dean Martin beside him. Rose opened the door and fainted. The kids thought they were seeing a ghost. Dean stood on the porch and watched the reunion, then quietly left. Tommy DiGiacomo lived another 32 years. He never missed a Father's Day. He never missed a birthday. He was at every graduation, every wedding, every moment that mattered. And every year on the anniversary of the night he came back from the dead, he sent Dean Martin a card with 2 words. Thank you, brother.